open up minds and remind us of our purpose on this earth. We thank you, dear Jesus, and so be it. So, again, good afternoon, evening, good night, depending upon where you're watching in the world, to this Saturday that we are having Leo presenting yet again another parable for us, the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. For those of you watching virtually or the recorded version, don't forget to check out the previous recordings and the previous videos in this series that Leo has done on various different parables. So without wanting to steal any of the time here, Leo, please.
Thank you, Dion, and thank you, Kirsten. And thank you. And hello and welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, soon to be good evening, this amazing afternoon, summer afternoon, right? Where we didn't choose to go to the beach, we chose to come to the SSB. That's an awesome thing. That's a great thing. After this, we can go to the beach, right? Enjoy the sun and all. But happy to be here, giving continuation to the work that we have started. As Kirsten said, the series of teaches Jesus' teachings and guidance that it brings to us, right? Another parable, continuation of what we have started this last month, and I would say it was giving continuation as well to this month. And I will go over a little bit. Have to say a little bit nervous with this parable. I don't know why, but I share my excitement and my worry about presenting this parable, not only because of as Kirsten said, in terms of time, right, but the content as well that when we bring this here, we want to make sure that we're not creating more chaos in our lives, but really illuminating our minds and our hearts as well with what our Master Jesus brought to us, right? I think we have had, centuries, thousands and thousands of, in terms of time, a couple thousand years, right, of information that it doesn't really illuminate our minds, but it create more difficulty. So hopefully I will not do that. Hopefully I'll bring some enlightenment to you, and I would say I'm sorry if perhaps that is not the case, and we'll have other opportunities for us to correct that as well. Interesting enough, this month, as we're closing today, we start the month talking about the law of freedom. As we sat down in lieu of a full meeting, we sat down as a group and we talk about the law of freedom. And then we study a little bit, the law of freedom that is in the third part of the Spirit's book. And we discussed it where, we came to the consensus of freedom of what, right? And obviously this country, we talk so much about freedom, right? And we talked about the freedom of our own evils that we create inside of us, our own difficulties that we create inside of us. And it was a great discussion. And Jusada actually, in a very eloquent way, much better than what I did last month, talked about the parable of the talents, right? The 1, the 2, and the 3 talents, right? The 5 talents, excuse me. And she explained so well, and we urge you to please go watch and look for the information on our different means that we have of the SSB for you to watch it as well, and the one that we presented last month talking about the talents as well. And our friend Wendell also talked about what last week? Salvation, right? And again, salvation of what, right? Salvation of all the difficulties that we create. So I feel that the reason I'm going through this is because it feels that, everything kind of works together, right? I'm not saying that they did this for me to close this or that way, but I think this is a complementation as much as the other content also complement what we're going to study here today. Because at the end of the day, we have talents. At the end of the day, we have the time that we have here right now to illuminate our lives and to liberate ourselves, right? To live a better life and save ourselves and hopefully save others too. Because the choices that others will make in their lives, that it's up to them. The only thing that we can do is to hopefully try and persist to be a good person, right? A good brother or sister. So the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. This is a very interesting topic because for those of us who actually would like to study more and dive into this this content, I would urge you to study chapter 16 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. And I want to go over this with you real quick because, again, it's the information that is there in the Gospel according to Spiritism, readily available within Spiritism, and sometimes it just crosses our minds, right? It crosses our the different guidance that we have in terms of the study and everything. So in this chapter, you will reach about the salvation of the rich, guard yourself against avarice, Jesus as Zacchaeus' house, parable of the evil rich men, which we'll study today, and the parable of the talents that we studied this month and last month as well. The providential usefulness of riches, the trials of riches and poverty, the inequality of riches. And then the Spiritist teachings, it's so beautiful. It talks about the true ownership, the use of riches, detachment from earthly possessions, the transmission of wealth as well. So please, 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 take the time to read a passage a day. It will be enough for us so that in a week we finish everything. Towards the end, when we talk about true ownership, the uses of riches and detachments, it's a little bit long, but it's so rich in information, and it gives us a glimpse. I would say a glimpse because the rest, what's going to happen to us once we read and study, it's up to us, right? But it gives us a different way to see riches in the riches that we have. Because when we talk about riches, we think about money, right? Material power, right? But the different riches that we have, right? So it kind of like changes our perspective, especially in the world today that is so materialistic that all that we think is that the person next to me has more than I do, right? The other family has a better family. The other person has, better qualities and whatnot. So let us really study and then find consolation in these passages. I would like to also share some of the works that we actually have that we'll be sharing here tonight. Some of them not, but we'll touch a little bit on them today. Some of them, most of them, I would say. The Spirit's Book, obviously, by Allan Kardec. There are some really interesting books that one can read and get information on these topics that we're going to read here today and study today. The book Emmanuel by Emmanuel and Chico Xavier. The Workers of the Eternal Life by Andrea Luiz as well, chapter 8 to be specific, Darkness and Suffering. I will mention a little bit in terms of where it's connected to this discussion that we have here today in specific, but the mentor doing this in this chapter, the workers of the light, when they're rescuing other friends who are in despair, they actually talked about this parable and how beautiful, it is, and the beyond reading out loud for them to help on the rescue, right? And for Andrea Luiz also to understand what is going on within ourselves. And we say within ourselves, it's that we are much alike those individuals who are being rescued, and they're in despair as well. There's this beautiful book, Pontos e Contos, for those who speak Portuguese. Unfortunately, it's not in English yet. Much like the book Emmanuel, points and tells that we will take a passage as well of this chapter 28, the parable that addresses the parable of the rich. Steering the Boat, or Tocando o Barco, by Emmanuel as well. Our Daily Bread, chapter 116, that is very available to us. The Parables and Teachings of Christ by Kabar Schutos. This is, again, another book that unfortunately, hopefully, very soon, it will be in English. And then The Wisdom of the Parables, that is another book in Portuguese by Dr. Humberto Roden as well. An amazing let's say, an amazing, amount of information that we can go back to and study, right? And I want to bring this here because I don't want to just think that, oh, Leo has this understanding or that understanding, but information is there. And if you want me to send this to you, please, I'll send it to you so you can study as well. And then you can make your own conclusions, right? And this is also to show that the information that we're bringing here, guess what? It is with the enlightenment of Spiritism, right? Because, like I said, we have the parable. We had the parable taught by our Master Jesus, and for 2,000 years we didn't do much to it, right? And we still see a lot of the sickness, a lot of the difficulties that we have created within one another, right? And we'll see some of them a little bit. And Spiritism comes and takes the veil of a lot of the questions that we have had, that we have created. Rightly so, because we want to understand, we want to become a better individual, right? That's why we question, that's why we also doubt sometimes, right? Because we want to know, we want to understand. And finally, that us ascending to a better realm within ourselves takes time. It's not overnight, right? So let us study. Anyways, let us go back to the actual parable, what we came here for. And I would like to go ahead and read. So bear with me so I can, go over this with you. And we will take each of the parts, each of the parables, we will talk about it. Some of them are probably, I think I didn't change. I still have highlighted of the areas that we're going to talk about it. And if you have an area that I did not address, please stop at the end and you can ask me. Take mental notes. It's okay to pull your phone to make notes to yourself, right? But please continue to pay attention. So the rich man and Lazarus, really interesting. There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. At his gate was laid a beggar named Lazarus, covered with sores, and longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs came and licked his sores. The time came when the beggar died, and the angels carried him to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried in Hades, where he was in torment. He looked up and saw Abraham far away, with Lazarus by his side. So he called to him, "Father Abraham, have pity on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in this fire." But Abraham replied, "Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, while Lazarus received bad things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. And besides all this, between us and you, a great chasm has been set in place, so that those who want to go from here to you cannot, nor can anyone cross over from there to us." He answered, "Then I beg you, Father, send Lazarus to my family, for I have 5 brothers. Let him warn them so that they will not also come to this place of torment." Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them." "No, Father Abraham," he said, "but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent." He said to him, "If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead." And that is the parable. Listening to some of the scholars, listening to studying some of this passage, we will learn that this is this parable. It only shows on the Gospel of Luke, no other gospel. And sometimes we see, and I mentioned this here, that some of the parables shows on this or that gospel, and we follow one because of the translation, the way it was brought to us. But this you will only find in the Gospel of Luke. As a matter of fact, is one of the, if I'm not mistaken, Luke is the one that brings most of the parables in his gospel. So and this is from the New International Version. You will see some variations here and there, but for the most part, it is the content, right? So let us take a look at this in general, right? Most of our, or all of the parables that we have studied thus far, right, or all of the other parables as well, if we can include that, only depicts of the life of the individuals or the characters here in the physical body. This is one of the parables that talks about the beyond, right? And this is something that I learned, study with some of the, like I said, the scholars, that it was very limited for the individuals, even though we have, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, some of our brothers and sisters of the past from Judaism studying the afterlife, but it was very limited. We didn't have an idea of what was the afterlife, right? The spiritual life, if we can say it that way. So this is the only one that we will see this account of Jesus mentioning about the beyond. What happens to us? Where do we go? It was so limited when we studied the words, and I think I highlighted on the next 2 slides, the word Hades right here. It doesn't mean hell, right? Hades was actually an explanation of all the dead people would go, right? Let's call it the valley of the dead people, right? So no matter if you were good or bad, you would go there, right? And here we can see that this man, the rich man, he went to this really difficult place where he was suffering, right? And he could still see Abraham, and he could also see Lazarus as well there, right? The other thing that I would like to bring is that this is not the Lazarus, the brother of Martha and Mary, okay? This is just the same name, and the name is used here. We believe that it is just to bring what is this man that is being helped, which Lazarus means, the etymology of the word is someone helped by God, right? So it's not the same Lazarus, because the first thought that we have is that, oh, it's the same Lazarus now, right? We know the what happened to Lazarus in terms of being buried alive and whatnot and everything. So what happened? He comes back as well. But that's for another time. I just want to clarify some of these things before we go on and go into details of this part. So this parable have something really interesting for us. The first thing is basically the state of mind, right? That this individual, the rich man, had, right? Which it leads us to right at the first verse and the second verse to show to us what we're going through on planet Earth right now, which is the feeling of indifference, right? It's the feeling of that we don't care. We just live our lives the way we're supposed to live, right? It also gives a glimpse as well, or let's say a great understanding of the life after life, right? If there is any place that we can go and say, okay, somebody doubts the idea of continuation, right? Here it is, Jesus talking about it, right? It also gives us, the touchstone on one of the other tenets of Spiritism, which is the communicability of the spirits. Because the rich man is saying, please send this man, so that he can talk to my brothers. Well, somebody's coming back and talking to us, guess what? It's through mediumship, right? So again, it's there. We just have to understand, and thank God with the enlightenment of Spiritism, we have a better understanding of this nowadays, right? One question, and this is something that Leo brought, right? The parable does not tell us where the richness of the rich man came from. Did he inherit it? Did he work for it? Right? Did he steal from someone? And I'm just creating, putting questions out there because this is going to be valid later on. Much like, why did the beggar only begged? why he didn't get up and get a job. Isn't it so? I mean, we can question the richness, where it came from, but why did this person didn't get up and help himself? Isn't it in the gospel, according to Spiritism, in many passages, that in the passages of that we're supposed to do what? Knock, right? And we will receive. So we have to do something, right? I want to just bring this here because it's hopefully not creating any chaos, but we have to ask these questions, right? Jesus didn't say it. And if he didn't say it, there was a meaning behind, right? There was an intention behind of saying this man was just there begging, and he was saved. And he was saved. What we know that he was saved, right? He didn't receive what the rich man received on earth, right? So again, just kind of bring this so we can kind of go through it, and hopefully by the end, and if I don't, remind me, we will clarify a little bit. I want to go over some of the passages of the Gospel according to Spiritism, because I don't want to anybody to think here, or whoever watches this online, that we're diminishing the powerfulness of riches that we have in our lives. And when we say riches, okay, let us not restrict our minds just on the riches that the rich man had. The food and all the things, the banquets, the things that we know that we would like to have in our lives as well, and the things that we have, okay? So I would like to invite everyone to change the idea here. So when we talk about riches, it's everything that we have in our lives. And if we take a look at it closely, we will see that is way beyond more than perhaps my neighbor right next to me has, right? So under the providential useness of riches part of the Gospel according to Spiritism, we will see that if wealth were an insuperable obstacle to the salvation of those who possess it, as might be inferred from certain words of Jesus, if interpreted literally and not according to their spirit, then God, who grants riches, would have put in the hands of some an instrument on an unavoidable perdition, a thought that is repugnant to reason. So, number one, we have riches. Okay, we can say, okay, we created riches, right? But God allows to happen. God allows for us to have it and utilize them, right? So, before we get to the idea of allowing it, guess what? It's there. So if it's there, God allows to happen. God gave the consent and created riches, right? When I say created riches, is look, I mean, we have all the different materials that we change into something else. Make paper from what, right? The minerals that we use to create some of the things that computers, chairs, and whatever it is, right? So the riches out there, what we do with it is different. If wealth could produce only evil, God would not have put it on the earth, right? And this is all under this passage, this chapter 16 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. The inequality of riches. There we will see, why are all humans not equally wealthy? They are not equally wealthy for one very simple reason. They are not equally intelligent, active, and industrious enough to acquire wealth, or moderate and foresightful enough to preserve it. Poverty is for some a test of patience and resignation. Wealth is for others a test of charity and self-denial. Let's remember the parable of the talents. What happened to two of them? They multiply it. The other, what did he do? He just took it and buried somewhere, right? Afraid that something would happen, right? So we need to change this idea. We need to change this idea. Under true ownership, what then do you truly possess? The answer is nothing that is for the use of their body, but everything that is for the use of their soul, intelligence, knowledge, and moral qualities, right? We all have this. We are intelligent enough, we have knowledge, and we have moral qualities as well. And we will take that with us. Under the detachment from earthly possessions, we'll see to reject wealth when God has given it to you is to renounce the benefits of the good. You can do by administering it wisely. This is very beautiful. To know how to do without it when one does not have it. To know how to put it to good use when one does, and to know how to sacrifice it when is necessary, is to act in accord with the Lord's designs. May those who receive what one calls in the world a good fortune say to themselves, my God, you have sent me a new responsibility. Give me the strength to carry it out according to your holy will. Know how to be content with the little. If you are poor, do not envy the rich, because wealth is not necessarily for happiness. If you are rich, do not forget that your possessions have been entrusted to you, and that you must justify their use as if they were given an accounting of expenditures. And we talk about accounting as well during the when we discussed the parable of the talents. So there you have it. Many explanations that the riches that we have. Number one, we have to kind of change our idea of riches really are, and then what we're supposed to do with them. For some of us, there are trials. They can be very difficult trials. For some of us, there are a simple tool that will help us with liberation, will help us with salvation as well, not only of ourselves, but others, right? And it is in the gospel, according to Spiritism, that it invites us to give alms. It invites us to help one another. But most frequently, whenever we can, what we should do, we should employ someone, so that the opportunity that we're giving to that individual, right, it's dignifying, right? We're elevating that individual. We're showing that person that, look, you are worth something, right? You can do this job. You can develop this knowledge, right? So let us change our perception about the riches, because until we live this very miserable life thinking that everything is against us, or the riches of the world is against us, and it's a perdition, we're not going to receive more talents. We're not going to receive more talents. And that obviously there are a bunch of feelings that comes from it, right? That arises from it. The fear, right? The doubts that we have. Should I go this far, or should I multiply it, 1 or 2 times, right? What should I do? But let us not be the men that bury the talent as we have studied. So let's go back to the parable now. Hopefully we have this insightful part of the gospel according to Spiritism, and there is much more for us to study this. There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and linen and fine linen, and lived in luxury every day. At his gate was laid a beggar named Lazarus, covered with sores and longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. Even dogs came and licked his sores. Some of this already mentioned, that you will see and read there. I was just trying to remind myself of the areas that we would like to touch on. But just one thing that I forgot to say at the beginning, this idea of the purple and the fine linen was to show how rich this individual was, because linen was a very expensive fabric at the time, and the purple actually comes from the sea snails actually, that they extracted the dye from the sea snails, and they dyed the linen, right, purple. To see someone in purple at that time was like, this person has money, right? This person really is bathed in money, in riches, right? So that's how they were to show themselves at the time, right? But just in this paragraph right here, dear friends, we see that the feeling of indifference that the rich man had for the beggar, right? It's, I have my life, I have my way, I have my riches, and I don't have to worry about the outer world, right? It's as if we were living in a bubble, right? When I say we, it's because in many times I consider myself this man, right? When we pass through a situation, whatever that is, right? When we see someone who is in need, who is a beggar, right? And we don't pay attention. We will see in the book steering the ship with Emmanuel, when he reminds us, and we're going to talk about it towards the end, that the beggar here is not necessarily a person who's looking for food, right? The beggar here could be someone who can explore some of our intelligence, can explore some of our deeds that we have multiplied, right? Not necessarily the food. And the only thing that the beggar wanted was not the food, was what fell from the table. There's a huge difference there. It's the extra. And sometimes we have so much extra leftovers, and what we do, we trash it. How many pairs of shirts we have, how many pairs of shoes we have, how many cars we have, how many this we have, how many, and this is for us, again, I'm not criticizing, this is for us to really analyze within ourselves, right? But it's a lot. And the little extra that we have will make wonders in someone else's life, right? And we forget about it, right? The water that we waste at the house. We talk about so much, the conservation of the planet, right? And we waste water like there's no tomorrow. Turn it off, right? And again, many, many other things that we have to, that we can actually share with one. But Emmanuel comes in this book, in the book entitled also Emmanuel, the chapter, chapter 5 entitled The Necessity of Experience. He says, well, it's not really the title, it's the passage of the book. These are just clarifications that Emmanuel brings to us. That in the moments of great struggles that we have, that there are those who despise the struggle, sinking into harmful impassivity in the face of the battles that take place within all human communities. Indifference, he says, nullifies the soul's possibilities for progress and obliterates its seeds of perfection, constituting one of the worst psychic states, because robbing the individuality of enthusiasm of the ideal for life, it forces into a stationary position and sterile, which are harmful in all aspects to its evolutionary path. So if we find ourselves in this position of indifference, be careful. In Joanna de Angelis also, there are several passages by Joanna de Angelis that she talks about this idea of indifference. If we are there, guess what? We need to pray. We need help, right? Is it hard to get in there? No, I have been there. I have been to the point that I was in so much stress that people would come to me at the workplace, they would tell me something, I would be like, okay, literally. No feeling whatsoever. And that drove me really because I knew what was going on. I had the feeling. And this is really hard. And sometimes, and I'm bringing this up because sometimes we do this unconsciously. We're not paying attention to what's going on inside of us. We don't associate with a condition that perhaps develop inside of us over time, because nothing happens overnight, right? And we don't pay attention to it. So let us be careful. Let us take a step back and analyze this what's going on with us. Much so, and I'll say this too, I'll dive a little bit more into this, because sometimes we tend to blame others. We tend to blame the situations that in our lives, right? In no point of this discussion of the parable, the beggar criticized the rich man. The beggar bad-mouthed the rich man. No, he didn't. He knew what was going on because they were rich. He was there, and he stood there for some time. There was a man who was laid at the gate, covered in sore, right? So it was a continuing thing, right? And never said anything about this rich man. All that he wanted was what? The crumbles that was falling from the table. So for us to analyze this idea, and this is something for us, because we don't want to be the rich man, and we don't want to be the beggar when we are in need, that we will badmouth somebody who has a little bit more than us. In the Spirit's book, we will come across this beautiful question, 938. couldn't the disappointments caused by ingratitude harden the heart and make it insensitive? The answer is that would be unfortunate, because persons with heart, as you say, will always be happy for the good they have done. So it's not what the other individual is doing, but it was what I'm doing. What is important is what I'm doing. And the beggar had this inside of him. That the beggar had this knowledge. They know that if the good they have done is not remembered in the present life, it will be in another. And the ingrate will then feel ashamed and remorse. And there is a continuation here, because it's beyond the idea of the what is somebody's giving it to me, but it's also what somebody is doing to me in terms of how their actions will hurt my feelings. That can go much more than if we, or let's say the pain can be much longer than if somebody decides not to give me something, right, that I need, something material, that is too. But this knowledge will not prevent their heart from feeling hurt. Mightn't this lead them to think they would be happier if they were less sensitive? And the Spirit said, yes, if they were to prefer a selfish happiness, a very sad happiness. However, if they know that the ungrateful friends who desert them are unworthy of their friendship, and that they have been mistaken about them, they will no longer regret losing them. Later on, they will find friends who are more understanding. You should pity those who treat you in a way that you do not deserve, because they will suffer a sad recompense. Don't let yourself be afflicted by them. It is a means for you to raise yourselves above them. So the feeling that comes with the hurts, right? What we are constantly moving back and forth into that feeling of what has happened in the past. And in nowhere in the parable there is a saying that the beggar said anything bad about the rich man. Daniel, is this something in here or no? So, giving continuation to it, the time came when the beggar died, and angels carried him to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried in Hades, where he was in torment. He looked up and saw Abraham far away, with Lazarus by his side. So he called to him, Father Abraham, have pity on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in this fire. So here's the man who is now in a position, and this is a beautiful picture of James Tissot here, showing this rich man and claiming to Abraham, right, and saying, "Please have pity on me." And the question here, to come and please help me, it's a beautiful thing. He's asking for help, right? However, this is the part that was really interesting studying the parable, that we see a man that is only asking for help, only asking for himself again. And we're going to see a little bit more. Only asking for him, not to change his ways, but give me the fast and easy pill, right? Allow me to take me out of this agony that, is also something that we're going to talk about soon, but give me the remedy. I don't want to put the effort. I don't want to change anything. He never said, I repent for what I have done, right? I mistreated or I didn't even treat the man outside, right? I left him. There was no recognition whatsoever of this feeling, right? Because when we look at it, it's like, yes, the man is asking for help, right? So why Abraham here? And by the way, Abraham being the father, right, of humanity in terms of what they knew of a good man as well. This is the elaboration behind what Jesus brings to us, right? He's asking for help, and he's in agony, right? The agony here is also interesting because agony in fire, but he already lost the physical body. So he doesn't have the physical body anymore. So What kind of agony is this that he's feeling, right? Dion is saying the conscience, the heart, as Wendell say too, the conscience right here, right? The heart, right, Wendell? Because sometimes we think it's, it's separated, but we should bring them together. But yeah, the agony of the conscience, right? So because he doesn't have the physical body anymore, right? We today can understand this. Obviously, at the time, it was kind of hard for them to understand, but we see that the agony was in his state of mind, right? Much like here, us on planet Earth, our life is quote unquote perfect, but we feel horrible. Why? Is our conscience screaming for us to get out of perhaps of the ideals of indifference that we have, right? Or on how we treat one another and how we treat ourselves as well. This is something interesting I want to bring, and for those who are watching us and trying to understand Spiritism as well, is that, and we have actually mentioned this the year before, but on question 150, we will see that Kardec asking, does the soul preserve its individuality after death? And the answer, yes, it is. Yes, it is. It never loses it. What would the soul be if it did not preserve its individuality? The higher spirit, they can answer with a question, folks, and it's okay, all right? But try not to answer other people with questions. But it's very eloquent the way they bring it to us, bringing reason to ourselves, right? And then the continuation is, how does the soul preserve its individuality if no longer has material body? It still has a fluid proper to it, which it draws from its planet, and which retains the appearance of its last incarnation, the perispirit. The second part is related really to the physicality, if you will. But when we talk about the individuality as well in this question, is that we want to emphasize that just because the rich man discarnated or died, guess what? He's not pure now. Just because the physical body closed shut its eyes, he's still vibrating the same way. He's still the same indifferent man that he was before. And we will see in the continuation of the parable soon that he even has the audacity to ask only for his circle of life. So he didn't change. There are two teachings on this right here. Obviously for us, that when we think that we will be saved, and then when something is happening to us, we're claiming for help, which is okay, but we have to watch. What brought me to this position, right? What brought me to this condition, as well as when we also come across the Lazarus, right? The beggar. What made him so special to be sitting right next to Abraham? His resignation. And to resign to the difficulties of the world is not easy, right? So was there a huge jump for him? Yes, there was, from a beggar to someone who is sitting next to Abraham. However, we have to say that the hard work here on earth was difficult for him to get to that position. So when we look at Joanna de Angelis, when we look at Emmanuel, when we look at these high order spirits, right, and they're not perfect yet, they're far from being perfect, right? We look at it and we say, wow, these spirits, they tried really hard and they succeeded. And there's another thing that would add to it. They're coming back and telling us, do the same thing. Strive, and strive, right? And be resigned, right? Be studious, be a hard worker, whatever we need to do to ascend. Because we're not going to be able to do everything, but at least the best we can in certain areas. So to sum this up, the man did not change. We will not change. There is a beautiful explanation. Forgive me now, I don't remember where we worked on this, but it's Dr. Roden, actually. He says something really interesting, that just the fact that we are discarnating, right, or we're going through a trial, that we'll become a better individual. quite frankly, what we see, for example, in many of the books of André Luiz, right, especially the one that we mentioned earlier today, we see that the spirits, they revolt against the difficulties that are going through. And they ask, where's God on all this? Right? When we lose a loved one, when we go through a trial, we ask, where's God? Right? We soon find in a way to alleviate our pain, the absence of God. So we can blame someone else and not take responsibility for our acts or for what we're going through, right? And to resignate to the situation as well. As well as, it doesn't mean that receiving something good will change that individual and make him a good person, right? In other words, the external is just a vehicle. What happens inside of us with the external is what is valid, right? Or sometimes can put us in deep trouble as well. Giving continuation. But Abraham replied, son, remember that he asked for the first thing, which was to quench his thirst, right? Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, while Lazarus received bad things, but now he is comforted here and you are in agony. And besides all of this, between us and you, a great chasm has been set in place, so that those who want to go from here to you cannot, nor can anyone cross over from there to us. It is amazing how Spiritism explains this to us. We see in many of the different authors, especially the works of André Luiz, Manuel Filomeno de Miranda as well, how the caravans of the higher spirits, when they go to rescue other spirits, right, that only a few are helped. They see, they connect, right? And the workers of the eternal life that we will see, the life eternal, we will see the same thing. Spirits being, readily to be helped, but they're still perturbed, and they cannot accept even the fact that those individuals are there to help them, because they're in the same state of mind of the rich men, right? So we create this abysm. We create this wall between us and these other spirits. We see them. We know that they exist. They know that we exist, but there is a huge valley between us, right? So it's really difficult when we put ourselves in this position, because he was claiming for help, but there was really a separation between them. It's much like me trying to connect with a radio station on the FM waves, but I'm on AM. It's not going to happen. The vibratory field, whatever we created, is not there. Talking to a friend, and this is a parallel here, talking to a friend about the conditions that some of the countries on the world actually are living right now, right? They're completely separated. We're not going to mention names here, but they're completely separated from the rest of the world. And, how the government, works. And I'm not saying that the US is perfect or saying that they should do that. But we were thinking, why does God allow this to happen? Well, for sure God allows, right? But these brothers and sisters who are reincarnating in these places, and some of them excluded, of course, they are vibrating the same way. If they're reincarnating there, guess what? It's not that God imposes that they reincarnate there. But we came out to the conclusion after our discussion with one another is that they are vibrating that way. So naturally, they're attracted with that vibratory field, if we can call it that way, or that mentality, right? The heart of things, right? And they're connected that way, right? So is it still necessary? No, it's not necessarily, but we make it necessary for ourselves because we're still vibrating that way, right? If we decided to come over here, to be here today, but other people decide to do other things, and it's okay, right? Because we're vibrating differently, right? And that's not in the sense of choosing this or that, but how we go about ourselves. And then he answered, "Then I beg you, Father, send Lazarus to my family, for I have 5 brothers, Let him warn them so that they will not also come to this place of torment. Again, the same men, the same tormented men, asking for who? 5 brothers. That's all he worried about. He never asked to guide me and I'll go over there and help, right? Help me get out of this anguish. Help me understand a little bit better how I can do better. No, just send somebody, right? So they don't come through this. But he never said, take away the riches so they don't come over here, right? And then we can dive into the different ways that he could have asked for help. But the idea here is that he didn't change. He's still the same indifferent individual that he was before. So much so that we will see later on what Abraham tells him. But I want to take a step and stop here to read what Humberto de Campos also brings to us in terms of this, how we're vibrating, even though we show ourselves in our moments of needs, and we don't know what to ask because we don't know what to ask. Simply, we think that what we're asking is what we need, but it's not. It's what we want, and God knows better, right? In this study of the parable of the rich, in the spirit realm, he says that the person who was actually talking, I forget his name now. It was actually involved with the Brazilian Spiritist Federation as well when he was incarnated, as I did a little research on it. He said, insensitivity in messengers of good, because some of the individuals who were in the crowd listening to him talking about the parable of the rich ask about this. It seems unreasonable that Abraham didn't help him, right? It seems unreasonable that this man, we see that calls Abraham father, right? And Abraham calls him son. So there is a relationship. We know that there is a relationship that and by Abraham acknowledging him as a son, Abraham is saying, you are part of us, but I'm not going to help you the way you want, right? He says the following: this concept arises from our deficiency in true understanding. Abraham and Lazarus saw in these sufferings of the rich man the inexhaustible mercy of the Heavenly Father, who, from our deepest mistakes, knows how to extract the bitter water that will heal our hearts. Both understood that it would be contrary to divine plans to bring their tortured brother false water that would not quench his spiritual thirst. After all, what did the rich man ask of the generous spirit of Abraham? He begged Lazarus to return to the world to give his parents, his wife, his children, and brothers the truth of God, so that they could be saved. How could he not remember to ask for the dissemination of these same truths, among all creatures? Why did he only think of those he loved by blood, when all men, our brothers, need the peace of God with the living water of redemption? And then he continues. The rich man's request is very similar to most of the supplications that come from the dark paths of the earth, daughters of ambitious selfishness or the ill-fated spirit of preference of creatures. Prayers that never reach God because they disappear in the same circle of shadow and ignorance where they were generated by the foolishness of indifferent men. So he didn't change. It's much like it's about me, my clan, right? My family first, and forget about everybody else. Forget about the world, right? We forget that when we are that we live in society, that we were born in a cell of a society called family, right? But that is the beginning. There is a whole body, right? We're a cell, but there is a whole body. And how do we serve, right? It's obviously when we are a good Samaritan, when we are a good citizen of the universe. Imagine what could have happened if this man were to help the beggar outside. Would the 5 brothers be in the same boat right now? No. So the act of goodness, of kindness that he would actually have done towards this man would have taught them a lesson, right? And they wouldn't be suffering, perhaps. So think of this. Our action also will change the actions of others. So much so that in this case, it didn't change because they were the same way. And now he's claiming to send somebody to say, change them also, right? I'm not saying it's not a beautiful act when we ask for family members, right? Because we care about them, so much so that we were born in society. But when we see the accounts of Bezerra de Menezes when he was on planet Earth, helping his daughter who was bedridden, right? And saying, I have done enough. So now I can go out and help another the son or daughter of someone else because somebody knocked on his door to say, I need help with my son, my child. I don't remember if it was a son or daughter, but I need help with my child. And he contemplated, I'm going to leave my kid home to help someone else. And he said, I have done what I could. Now it's up to God. And he goes, helps someone else. When he comes back, the daughter is doing well. So we have to put our limits, right? And we also have to go over our limits when it comes down to thinking, who is really my neighbor, right? Who is my mother? Who is my father, right? As Jesus taught us. So he's in the same way, the same state of indifference. To finalize, folks, Abraham replied, they have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them. I'm not going to send anybody. They already have all the teachings that they need, right? No, Father Abraham, he said. But if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent. He said to him, if they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead. And we have Spiritism, right? This is the nervous part that, part of the nervousness that we feel when we read these things. It's like, and we have all of this. Not only we have Moses, not only we have the prophet, not only we have Jesus, now the third revelation as well, right? Coming back from the dead and showing us, guys, look, what's going on? Where's our mind? Where's our hearts, right? Emmanuel, in this beautiful book, Our Daily Bread, says the following. The world has been replete with messages and emissaries for thousands of years. Notwithstanding, the great problem does not lie in demanding the truth in order to attend the exclusive circle of each person, but rather in the consideration by each individual with regards to the forward march ahead in his own valor towards the direction of the eternal realities. Many messages, many teachings, and we still doubt. Not the other, ourselves, our capabilities, right? When the Joanna de Angelis, I opened the book recently about when we were preparing especially when preparing the work, I read something just to connect with the higher minds, and I said a prayer. I forget the message now, but she reminds us to build a better future for ourselves and really put intent in a better future, right? And we forget that tomorrow is a consequence of today, much like today was a consequence of yesterday, right? And there are a lot of things that we cannot change, that perhaps we have done for so many let's say reincarnations, that we're not going to change our ways, just like we saw the rich man. However, we need to strive. We need to put the effort into it so that we create a better future, so that we don't live in this indifferent way, and that we find ourselves on the other side with this huge abysm between us and the higher minds, right? To finalize, folks, this is really interesting in this book, Steering the Boat, Tocando o Barco, by Emmanuel, that we remind ourselves that, as we were saying in the beginning, that perhaps the riches that we were talking about here, I will emphasize once more, is not just the money, right? But it's the power that sometimes we have. based on our good work, right? Think of the rich man in terms of the riches that he had. Perhaps he was a very, very, very hard worker. And he created all that rich. It's okay, right? He created such a richness that he was able to have a very nice stable with his family, right? For those who lived with him directly, right? But he forgot to put to good use, to multiply those talents that he created, that he multiplied, because first of all, he received the physical body. He received the capability of reincarnating on planet Earth, right? So God gave us that. So we don't start from scratch ourselves, right? So all of these things is important so that we can go ahead and multiply it by twofold, by threefold, so on and so forth, right? But he forgot. We forget that sometimes the riches that we have is not necessarily the money that we multiply, but the patience that we already could be practicing towards others, right? Sometimes we forget is the health that we have. If we're healthy enough, let's use our health to do different things, to help others, to be an example in someone else's life. We often come across individuals who, we know their age, 95, 97, and we ask, what's the secret? Right? Let's multiply that. Let's tell the individual, what did we do? Or perhaps what we didn't do, right? Because that's important as well. The comfort that we have in our lives, and that it doesn't have to be the lavish table that we have. It just something crossed my mind now that Mr. Roden also says something really interesting when he's studying this parable. He said that perhaps the rich men die of indigestion. It just crossed my mind, but it's so true, right? That perhaps somebody who eats so much had heartburn or something, but the way he says in the book, it's really interesting. Perhaps he died of indigestion, right? And he also mentions that he had a really beautiful funeral, right? Because he in the parable also says that he was buried, but the poor man didn't have a burial, right? Perhaps he was passed, thrown somewhere in a ditch or something back in the day, if this was a true account, right? But we know it's a parable. But he even takes the step to analyze such a thing, and it's really interesting and funny. But it is so true, right? That he didn't have a proper burial, but he was sitting next to Abraham. So the riches that we have, right? The information that we have gathered thus far, and if we can multiply, it's great. And that goes with anything in life, right? We have to be grateful for the beautiful things that we have received, but we also have to be grateful for the negative things that we have received in life, right? What about the no's, the moments that the doors were shut, right? And then we can take that forward and say, move on, so that when someone comes to us, not only we don't do the same way, but we also tell that individual, keep going, right? That healthy and courageous act of not diminishing the faith of others, right? The hope of others, right? To be hopeful is a beautiful thing. And if we're very hopeful, let us also multiply that rich as well. Emmanuel finalizes this message, this chapter of the book, by saying, let us embrace the penitence of the need and discouragement, of expiation and suffering that mark our steps at every angle of the evolutionary world, and offering them our own hearts in the form of fraternal service, let us be convinced that we will march with them in the direction of imperishable life for the definitive incorporation of our spiritual inheritance. Let us take a final look on what we mentioned at the beginning. Nothing was said on how the rich man received his riches or amounted his riches, right? Nothing was said in terms of why the poor man didn't find a job. The thing is the message is for us to stop and think that, as Emmanuel is saying here, let us embrace those moments. Do not ask questions and do not doubt. because at the end, we will be steering our boat to the same place, right? We will be sitting next to Abraham in this father figure that Jesus uses here to be one family, right? Instead of creating this huge difference or wall between ourselves. So it's important that we look at it in a different way, right? Let us not ask. I do. I'm not lying. I do. Sometimes we have this intention of, why am I here? And if I'm here, the other person can do it as well. Yeah, maybe the person does not have the health that I have, or the intentions that I have, right? I'm not saying that we will become irresponsible towards the responsibility of others, right? Because also we have to take action. We also have to remind others that they have something that they can give up themselves. That's why when we actually are giving the passes here, we remind one another, yes, I came here to receive, but we can give a little bit of ourselves. Emmanuel, Joanna de Angelis, many of them reminds us of the same thing, that we are this powerhouse emitting energy, right? So it's important for us to look at it and change our ways, not to question, and let us do what we're supposed to do. If it's there in front of us, let us act. Much like we see the little piece of paper on the ground, right? That sometimes we just pass by. Let's pick it up. We do that at our homes, I hope, right? Hopefully we do that at work as well, right? But we tested this at work, and believe me, we came across some individuals that is like, they just live there. It's like, it doesn't bother me, right? But if we see it, let us do our part. Forgetting that the others, they're not doing their part. One day, perhaps, somebody will see it and they will do the same thing. Small examples, small things. As we study in the Gospel according to Spiritism, the way we treat the small things is perhaps the way we treat the great things in life as well, when God gives us as a talent. So with no further ado, I would like to thank everyone. By the way, this is my new boat. If you guys want to, share with me, no, I'm just kidding, folks. I'm just kidding. But, it's so beautiful because this is a beautiful book. It's entitled Tocando Barco. And that I wanted to finalize with this beautiful picture of steering our ship, right? Our boat into the right direction, towards the sun, towards enlightenment, and bringing with us, as there is a joke that if you have a boat, you have many friends, right? Steering with us also many other lives as well, and many other friends. With no further ado, we would like to thank you and open up for questions and comments that you may have, please.
Hey, Liu, thank you so much for sharing this beautiful message with us. It's interesting the amount of details and information that your presentation was able to bring us, and it shows us the way we should try to read the gospel with different eyes and more open eyes in order not to lose the real message. And it calls my attention that when we think about the rich man, he didn't actually deny help to Lazarus, right? And he didn't prevent him from having access to leftovers. And even though he couldn't have help from the father. So I'd like you to comment on this a little bit and maybe bring us a reflection on what is really important when we are leading with the rich we have, in order to deserve to be helped by the Father in the future.
So just to clarify, so your understanding is that he did not stop Lazarus from begging.
Yeah, it's like he was more in a posture or in an attitude of indifference, because right. if he hadn't called Lazarus' name before Abraham, maybe we could also think that he hadn't even realized or noticed the presence of Lazarus there. But then he said, ask Lazarus to bring some water because I'm thirsty. So we realized that he had noticed, but he hadn't denied help to Lazarus. Actually, he was indifferent. So
Correct. So great question, and this is a point that he noticed, right? He may not even know that that was Lazarus, but looking from afar, we can put ourselves in his shoes as well. He perhaps could say, "Oh, that is that man who was begging in front of my house, right, at my gate, or my way to work, whatever." Right. So he noticed, and he connected the two. 1 + 1. Oh, there's 2, right? So he never said, "Get away from me," like I don't want to help you. But yes, it was that feeling of indifference. One of the things and now I will bring this question again here, because this was one of the first questions that I have studying Spiritism, is that what if we are just an individual who doesn't cause harm to anyone, right? And I remember asking this when we were studying with Jorge Godinho, when we were still a group at the University of Maryland, right, Daniel? And I asked this question, and then he reminded us that is in the Spirit's book. I don't remember the answer, the number of the question, but we are responsible for the good that we do, as well as the good that we don't do, right? And this is the difference that is going to make in our lives. That perhaps I had the opportunity, but I didn't seize the opportunity, right? I had the capability, I had the means, but you know what? Yeah, somebody else is going to help them, right? I heard from a discussion as well on the radio that this lady did not want to help, some other friends from other religions, because she used to say to this guy who was actually talking on the radio that they have Jesus, I don't have to help them, right? And think about it, and I'm pretty sure that this was serious, because he was giving the account, on the radio. Hopefully, he wasn't going to lie, but he wasn't lying. But that's the idea, right? Perhaps we don't verbalize it. We don't have the guts to verbalize like she did, right? But that's how we think. Oh, someone else. Well, will come and take care of this poor person, right? Someone else will take care of the needs of my kids, of my coworker who's screaming for help, right? Someone else will do. And then when it comes, and we read this in the Gospel according to Spiritism, when the help comes, it's too late, right? So great question and great analysis in terms of, if he recognized Abraham on the other side, he noticed. At least he noticed. And that is another baseline for the idea of indifference. Let us not be in that position where we notice things, we know that we can do something, right? And we don't do it. And that when he noticed, it became a choice, not something that, okay, the person there. And there could be several other beggars, right? There could be we see this on the streets that, sometimes, you will see one person one day asking for money, and the next week is someone else, right? There could be different individuals who are in need, right? But the fact that he recognized Lazarus afterwards, it's like, yeah, I know this guy. Here he is again, right? And he asked for help, right? So beautiful question, and hopefully that helps as well. And I can actually, we can actually try to put the question on the video as well when we process the video and we put it out there. Anyone else?
We just have a question, comment by Osaura. Leo, thank you for this wonderful message. Indeed, wonderful message, Leo.
Thank you. It is, folks. And as we were preparing the message, and I said at the beginning, there is a level of responsibility to all of us, right? There is a level of responsibility for myself as well. The time that we spend the here, talking about such a beautiful message, the information that we have received from the dead, in a nice way. Please, dear mentors, don't take me wrong there. They understand what I'm trying to say. And we don't utilize these beautiful talents that we have well, right? And sometimes we create more chaos than helping others. And that is one of my I don't like to say fear, but the responsibility that is inside of me, hopefully inside of you as well, that when we look at the talents that we have, the riches that we have, that we're multiplying them well, that we don't find ourselves in this dilemma, that we also study in the workers of the eternal life that some of the individuals who were in the let's call the valley of darkness, okay, they were spiritists. They were also spiritists. They knew about the life after life, and they find themselves there, imprisoned by their own selves, right? So we hope that this message will bring you consolation, will bring salvation, as our dear friend Wendell brought to us last week, right? And we are doing our part, not to be like the rich men, but to be someone like Lazarus, that we are thankful for what we're going through, that we are working hard to do the best we can, not to also badmouth or say anything against God and those whom God have sent to the earth to help us, and not create this feeling of indifference within ourselves. So thank you so much, and we'll pass to the second part of our, that was many of me. Leo. Beautiful. Well, dear friends, I will invite everyone for us to pray together as we ask Daniel to put on the music. Dear Master Jesus, we are thankful for this amazing moment that we had here, hoping that your message can echo in our hearts, teaching us how to guide ourselves and how to guide others whenever possible. We pray for the hearts and minds who are indifferent on planet Earth, that they find themselves some way, somehow, guided by your love, we also pray for the many Lazarus on planet Earth that are resigned and working to understand where they are. Guide us, dear Lord, that during the moments of our lives that we turn to be a rich man, that we can remember this message, that we look around not only for our family members, our friends, our circles of life, but to pray for humanity, to give ourselves to humanity. Help us be like the beggar who never said anything against the rich brother, his family, never said anything about our dear Creator. Only trust that He would be saved. Take our doubts away and let us seize the moment with the talents that we have received, the riches that we have, the riches that will multiply one day, so that we can help ourselves and help others. And in the beautiful analogy that the book Steering the Boat brings to us, let us steer ourselves into greatness. We are thankful for this moment, and so be it.